At a recent congressional hearing on the proposed FY 2026 national defense budget, an unexpected statement from Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Gibo Teodoro instantly caught the attention of defense analysts and military observers. In what initially sounded like a routine budget discussion, Secretary Teodoro casually mentioned a number that no one was prepared for: 8 new frigates for the Philippine Navy. That single word immediately set off alarm bells across the defense community. For years, the Philippine Navy has struggled with limited surface combatant numbers, relying on a small core of modern ships supplemented by aging patrol vessels. The idea that 8 frigates could soon be part of the fleet represents a historic shift, one that could redefine the country's maritime posture for decades to come. At first glance, some assumed the Secretary was referring only to future acquisitions under the Navy's modernization roadmap. After all, the Philippines is already in the process of expanding its surface fleet with newly built warships. But as analysts dug deeper into the wording and context of Teodoro's statement, a much larger picture began to emerge. This was not just about 2 new frigates. It was about 6 more ships that have long been rumored, quietly discussed, and strategically positioned for transfer. The Abukuma-class destroyer escorts of the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. If confirmed, this development would mark the single largest expansion of the Philippine Navy's surface combatant force in modern history. To understand why this announcement is so significant, we need to look at the current state of the Philippine Navy. At present, the Navy's most capable surface combatants are the Jose Rizal-class frigates, which represent a major leap forward in terms of sensors, weapons integration, and overall capability. These ships finally gave the Navy modern, missile-capable warships after decades of relying on refurbished or lightly armed vessels. More recently, the Navy began welcoming the Miguel Malvar-class frigates, a follow-on class designed to further improve survivability, sensor coverage, and combat effectiveness. These new ships are expected to serve as the backbone of the fleet well into the future. But even with these additions, the Navy's numbers remain limited. In a maritime environment as vast and contested as the West Philippine Sea, quality alone is not enough. Presence matters, coverage matters, endurance matters. This is where the idea of 8 frigates becomes transformative. With 8 major surface combatants, the Philippine Navy would be able to sustain continuous patrols, rotate ships without leaving gaps, and maintain a visible deterrent presence in multiple maritime zones simultaneously. For the first time, the Philippines would have a fleet capable of persistent operations rather than symbolic patrols. While Secretary Teodoro did not explicitly name the ships during the hearing, his phrasing strongly suggested that these additional frigates would not all be brand new constructions. Instead, he referred to vessels that would be re-equipped rather than upgraded. That distinction is crucial. It points directly to second-hand transfers, specifically ships that would arrive stripped of sensitive systems, then refitted with new equipment chosen by the Philippine Navy. This description aligns almost perfectly with ongoing discussions between the Philippines and Japan regarding the transfer of Abukuma-class destroyer escorts. Japan has long been one of the Philippines' most reliable defense partners. Over the past decade, Tokyo has steadily expanded security cooperation with Manila, providing maritime patrol aircraft, air surveillance radars, Coast Guard vessels, and training and capacity-building support. Each of these contributions strengthened Philippine maritime awareness and law enforcement capability. But warships, especially combat-capable surface vessels, represent an entirely different level of cooperation. A transfer of Abukuma-class ships would signal a strategic trust that goes far beyond equipment donations. The Abukuma-class consists of small destroyer escorts commissioned by Japan between the late 1980s and early 1990s. While not large by modern destroyer standards, these ships were designed for a specific and highly important mission: anti-submarine warfare. With a displacement of roughly 2,000 tons, Abukuma-class vessels sit between corvettes and full-sized frigates. Their compact size allows for efficient operations while still carrying a respectable combat load. Originally, these ships were equipped with a 76mm Otio Malera naval gun, widely used across NATO and allied navies, anti-ship missiles, typically Harpoon-class systems, torpedo tubes and depth charges for submarine hunting, and a full suite of surface search radars and sonar systems. However, Japanese policy is clear when it comes to military transfers. Sensitive systems, especially advanced sensors and weapons, are usually removed before handover. This is where Secretary Teodoro's re-equipping comment becomes so important. By stating that the ships would be re-equipped rather than upgraded, the Defense Secretary signaled that these vessels would not undergo extensive structural modernization in Japan. Instead, the likely process would look like this. The ships are transferred in a basic, stripped-down configuration. Sensitive Japanese systems are removed. The Philippine Navy installs its own weapons, sensors, and electronics. This approach gives the Philippines flexibility. Rather than being locked into legacy systems, the Navy could choose equipment that aligns with its existing logistics, training, and alliance framework. Potential options include anti-ship missiles compatible with current inventory, locally supported radar and combat management systems, electronic warfare suites sourced from trusted partners. In other words, these ships would not arrive as museum pieces. They would arrive as adaptable platforms. Based on available information and hints dropped during official discussions, the timeline appears surprisingly realistic. Analysts estimate that the first Abukuma-class ships could arrive within the next 2 years, potentially before the end of President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr.'s term in 2028. This makes sense for several reasons. First, the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force is already phasing out older vessels as newer classes enter service. Modern frigates and multi-mission destroyers are steadily replacing Cold War-era platforms. Second, Japan has demonstrated a willingness to accelerate transfers when strategic conditions demand it, especially in Southeast Asia, where maritime security is increasingly interconnected. Third, the Philippines has already laid much of the groundwork through legal frameworks, defense agreements, and interoperability initiatives. In short, the political and logistical pieces are already on the board. It's important to emphasize that these 6 Abukuma-class ships are only part of the story. The Philippine Navy is also moving forward with plans for 2 additional brand-new frigates, which are expected to be more advanced than even the Miguel Malvar class. These future ships are likely to feature improved sensor fusion, longer-range missile systems, enhanced survivability and damage control, greater endurance for extended patrols. Combined with the Abukuma-class transfers, these 2 new frigates complete the picture that Secretary Teodoro outlined. A total of 8 frigates entering service over the coming years. This is not a random number. It reflects a deliberate force structure aimed at creating a balanced, sustainable surface fleet. As exciting as this development is, it's important to remain realistic. The Philippine Navy will not suddenly deploy 8 fully armed, fully crewed frigates overnight. Several challenges remain. Rearming timelines. Installing weapons and sensors takes time. Crew training. Each ship requires hundreds of trained personnel. Sustainment costs, fuel, maintenance, and logistics add up quickly. However, none of these challenges are deal breakers. They are the natural growing pains of a navy, transitioning from coastal defense to credible maritime deterrence. And for the first time, the Philippines appears willing to take that step. Having 8 frigates on paper is one thing. Turning them into a credible fighting force is something entirely different. To understand the true weight of Secretary Teodoro's statement, we need to examine how these ships would reshape the Philippine Navy's operational reality, especially in the context of today's rapidly evolving maritime security environment. For decades, the Philippine Navy has been structured around constabulary missions: patrol, presence, and humanitarian response. Combat capability often came second, constrained by limited budgets and aging platforms. This mindset is now changing, driven largely by events in the West Philippine Sea. The strategic urgency behind this naval expansion cannot be separated from what is happening at sea. In recent years, Chinese maritime activity in the West Philippine Sea has intensified. Coast Guard ships, maritime militia vessels, and naval escorts now operate with near-constant presence in contested areas. These are not isolated patrols. They are coordinated, persistent, and designed to test limits. For the Philippines, the challenge has never been about winning a naval battle. It has been about maintaining presence without being overwhelmed. This is where numbers matter. A navy with only a few major surface combatants faces an impossible dilemma. Deploy too often, and ships wear out rapidly. Deploy too little, and presence disappears. 8 frigates fundamentally change this equation. With a larger fleet, the Navy can rotate deployments, maintain readiness, and sustain long-term patrols without exhausting personnel or platforms. This alone dramatically improves deterrence. There is a common misconception that deterrence is purely about missiles and guns. In reality, deterrence begins with visibility. A frigate on patrol sends a very different message than a lightly armed patrol vessel. Even if weapons are not fired, the presence of a missile-capable warship alters calculations. With 8 frigates, the Philippine Navy could maintain continuous coverage in multiple maritime zones, escort resupply missions with credible protection, conduct joint patrols without overcommitting assets. This does not escalate tensions, it stabilizes them by reducing uncertainty. Critics often point to the age of the Abukuma-class ships, arguing that vessels commissioned in the late Cold War era have limited relevance today. This criticism misses a key point. Warships are not defined solely by their launch date. They are defined by how they are equipped, maintained, and employed. The Abukuma-class was designed with strong hull construction, robust propulsion systems, efficient layouts for sustained operations. More importantly, their original mission, anti-submarine warfare, remains highly relevant. Submarines are increasingly present in regional waters, and detecting them is one of the most complex naval tasks. Even a modest ASW-capable platform significantly enhances maritime domain awareness. When integrated with modern sensors, these re-equipped ships can serve as force multipliers. This creates a layered fleet structure. New frigates for high-intensity and leadership roles, with the re-equipped Abukuma-class ships for patrol, escort, and area presence. However, ships are only as capable as the people who operate them. The Philippine Navy will face challenges in manpower and logistics. Operating 6 additional combatants is expensive. The solution lies in standardization, re-equipping the Abukuma-class with systems similar to those already in use to reduce logistical strain. Japan's role does not end at transfer. Technical assistance and sustainment support will be crucial. Beyond hardware, this development sends a powerful geopolitical message. Japan's willingness to transfer combat-capable ships reflects a shift in regional security thinking. For the Philippines, this partnership complements existing alliances, turning the nation from a passive beneficiary into an active contributor to regional stability. It is important to understand that this transformation will not be dramatic overnight. There will be delays and adjustments, but naval modernization is a long game. What matters is the direction, and the direction is now clear. The Philippine Navy is moving away from minimal presence toward credible deterrence. 8 frigates are not about matching any single regional power. They are about ensuring that Philippine sovereignty is defended by capability, not just by statements. By the time all 8 frigates are operational, patrol patterns will change, training standards will rise, and strategic confidence will grow. These frigates are not the end goal, they are the foundation. By the time the final ship is commissioned, the Philippine Navy may find itself in a position it has not occupied in generations, operating a fleet designed not just to exist, but to endure. The significance goes far beyond fleet size. It represents a shift in doctrine, mindset, and national ambition, establishing a navy that can reliably defend national interests day after day. Historically, deployments carried symbolic weight, limited by logistics. That cycle limits strategic options. With a larger fleet, the Navy can move towards sustained maritime operations with rotational deployments without gaps, overlapping patrol zones, and ships remaining on station longer. This transition alone changes how other actors perceive Philippine resolve. Consistency signals seriousness. Naval strength is also psychological. When foreign vessels encounter the same Navy repeatedly, predictability disappears and pressure increases. 8 frigates allow the Navy to appear where it was not expected, maintain pressure without escalation, and normalize lawful presence in contested waters, reshaping behavior at sea over time. Despite the optimism, risks remain. The Abukuma-class ships are not new. Their value depends on careful maintenance and a realistic operational tempo. Modern fleets are expensive, requiring sustained political commitment. Scaling up too quickly can also dilute expertise. None of these risks are insurmountable, but ignoring them would be costly. Unsurprisingly, this has sparked debate. Some argue for focusing only on new-build warships, while others see second-hand transfers as a practical solution. In reality, this is a false choice. New ships bring cutting-edge capability. Second-hand ships bring immediate presence. The combination of both allows the Navy to address today's needs while preparing for tomorrow's threats. It is a pragmatic strategy, not a compromise. The deeper implication of this development lies in regional alignment. Japan's decision to support Philippine naval capability reflects a broader shift toward collective maritime security. It also sends a clear message. Philippine maritime security is no longer a purely national concern. It is part of a shared regional interest. Perhaps the most important outcome of this expansion is institutional momentum. Once a navy reaches a certain threshold of capability, growth becomes easier. 8 frigates create that threshold. Future acquisitions, whether submarines or unmanned vessels, can be integrated into an already functioning framework. This is how modern navies are built. By the end of the decade, the Philippine Navy could plausibly field a balanced surface fleet with improved maritime domain awareness and greater operational confidence. Not a fleet designed for dominance, but one built for defense, resilience, and credibility. That alone represents a historic achievement. Secretary Teodoro's brief statement may one day be remembered as a turning point, revealing a shift in how the Philippines thinks about maritime security, from reactive to proactive, from symbolic to sustained, from limited to credible. The road ahead will not be easy, but for the first time in a long while, the direction is clear. 8 frigates are not just steel and electronics. They are a statement of intent, a signal that the Philippines is prepared to defend its seas, not through provocation but through presence, professionalism, and persistence. And in today's strategic environment, that may be the most powerful message of all.